Well, I want to welcome you to Observer of Anomalous Objects. It's my channel here. My name is Dale Robinson, and this channel is dedicated to everything UFO or alien or NHI related. And I'm really excited that you're watching us today, or at least watching this episode. It's going to be an exciting one. We're going to be talking about abductions, and we're going to be talking about orbs, and not just in generalities, but I'm going to talk about an experience that a friend of mine had back in 1998. And then I'm going to talk about my own experience that I had with my wife on July 7th with an orb. And so I'm really excited about that. Really excited to be able to share my story and be able to share my friend Gary's story with you. Um, Gary was going camping, and there's a video I'm going to play of that in just a minute. But he had an otherworldly encounter. You're going to get more on the video, but he and two of his friends decided to go camping. They were about 3 miles from their campsite when the truck broke down, and they looked up in the sky, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and they saw this, what they called a flying saucer, traditional flying saucer type craft. And it looked about the size of a car, but it was quite a ways away. And so that means obviously it was bigger than a car. And so that's what they saw. And it kind of hovered for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then they experienced this tremendous amount of time loss. I'm going to play the video, but I want to go ahead and show one more clip before I do that. And that is, this isn't a perfect rendition because of the fact that I couldn't find one, but they believe that they were abducted. And one of the things that Gary saw while he was aboard the spacecraft, this has come back through dreams and flashbacks, even when he's awake, is that he saw his two friends, Greg and Gene, strapped to tables. And they saw these larger, like I think he said 7 foot aliens that were there. Now, he didn't exactly describe what they were doing, but in his flashbacks, that's what he remembered. And so it's pretty exciting. Let me go ahead and play that video for you. And just like I said, let me preface this and kind of give you an idea. The video will tell you some, but this happened near Sweet Home, Oregon, and it happened in October of 1998. They were going up there camping. I'll say this in the video, but they were out spotlighting. I think this was about the third day that they had been camping, and the truck broke down. And so as they were walking back to their campsite, which was up on the Calapooya Mountain, and so if you would want to know where that is, if you ever get to Sweet Home, you go over to Holly, you make a left at the Holly store, and that's Calapooya Road, and it goes up and it kind of follows the Calapooya River up to the Calapooya Mountain. And so that's where they were. Let me go ahead and play that video now. Observer of Anomalous Objects. I'm out here just about 20 miles. I guess it would be southeast of Holly. You go to the Holly store and you turn on the road there, and you go out about 20 miles. And what makes this area significant is that something amazing happened here in 1998. It was in the month of October, and it was, I think they said it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. But two of my friends and then one of their friends, a person I don't know, they came out here to go camping. And they were out spotlighting. I know that's not something you're supposed to do, but I'm assuming that after 25 years, the statute of limitation would probably protect them. But anyway, the truck broke down. And as they were walking back to their camp, and I guess it was about 2 or 3 miles away, somewhere in there, all of a sudden they saw this object in the sky. It was like a flying saucer is the way they described it. And all of a sudden, I guess it must have seen them because it's changed direction. I think he said it described as going sideways towards them. And so this was about 2:15 in the morning, and all of a sudden, the next thing they know, they're standing in the same place, but it's like an hour and 10 minutes later. And Gene, who's now passed away, he was the first person to say, you know what, we were inside that craft. And at first, Greg and Gary couldn't remember it, but Gary
sometimes when he was awake, sometimes when he was dreaming, he had these flashbacks. And he would be seeing Greg and Jean on tables, and they were strapped down, and there were beings that were there. And these were not like the Greys, though. These were larger ones. I think he said somewhere around maybe 7 to 8 feet tall, kind of matching the ones that were described in Las Vegas recently. But this is a really, really beautiful area. Can't quite get my camera to switch around, so I'll just have to give you a view of it like that. If you look up there, that's kind of an opening, but you got to remember that the topography here has changed a lot in 25 years. And so a lot of these trees that you see here were probably just saplings at one point. But after 25 years of growth, I mean, you can see how much it's grown up. But 25 years ago, this area would have been much more open. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to go ahead and post this as part of a video I'm going to do on their experience. Thank you.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that video. I purposely went out to the area where Gary told me that they were at, and I realized this was 25 years ago, and a lot of things were different. But some of the questions that I asked is, man, what kind of experience was this? Was this terrifying? Were you excited? What was it that you were feeling when this happened? And he said when they first saw the flying saucer, that they were more curious than afraid. And they said, but when they realized, that they had been brought back exactly to where they were, and yet an hour and 15 minutes or so had disappeared, he said, then they became afraid. And I think I said it in the video as well. It was at first, Gene was the only one who remembered that they were on that craft. I mean, immediately he said, we were on that craft. And so later on, Gary started having some flashbacks of it, and my understanding is Greg just has never wanted to deal with it, and people, I mean, that just shows you the different reactions that people have when they have we'll just call it a traumatic experience in their lives. Some people relive it over and over again, and other people just want to push it aside and they don't want to deal with it, and that seems to be what was going on with Greg. But Gary has embraced it. It's a part of his life. And it happened about 25 years ago. And so this is one of those things that I think brings a lot of controversy to the subject of UAPs and the issue of abduction, especially when you study some of the cases. I mean, I have a friend on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it now, who basically believes aliens are all evil, that they are, some are demons and some are just evil aliens. And then I have other friends on the other end of the spectrum, like Sova and others who believe that aliens are awesome. They're amazing. They're great. And so that's one of the battles that we have on UAP Twitter or UAP X, whatever you want to call it now, is that we have a wide variety, a diverse amount of opinions when it comes to aliens. And nowhere is that more problematic than when you're talking about abductions. I've read several books on abductions. I've talked to several people like Gary who've been abducted, and nothing is uniform. I'll say the closest I've seen would be the story of Betty and Barney Hill and Travis Walton. There are some similarities there. Neither one of them were hurt, although I've got friends who will say the fact that they were abducted, is a crime. Now, I do have to say this, and I hope you'll think about this for a minute. I'm not in any way justifying abductions, especially, I'll get to this in a second, but especially as we think about like Whitney Schreiber. I mean, he was abducted, and it's well documented that he was probed, and his doctor even called it, that he was raped. And I don't know that it's necessarily a rape. Maybe it is. I don't want to demean anything that's happened to anybody, but they were probing. And the way I'll try to explain it while I'm kind of struggling, trying to put this all together, is they may look at us the way we look at animals. And so we don't ask animals to get in a truck for us to take them from one location to another. We don't ask permission. when we do that. And so, I mean, if the animals could speak, how would they view us? And my thing is, my speculation is that I suspect that aliens, the fact that they are so much more advanced than we are, the fact that they can either get here or they've been here, the whole time, they've had all this technology, they may look at us the way we look at animals. And so they may not see it as a crime. They may not see it as a violation of our rights, because they may look at us the way we look at animals. But in this particular abduction story, there was, outside of having some flashbacks and some recollections when he's awake or when he's asleep, I don't think Gary's had really any negative responses to it, or anything that's kind of hung around. But I mean, I look at even Whitney Strieber, though. I mean, even as traumatic as his abduction event was, or events, I guess we should say, he did seek them out afterwards. And so he wanted to know more. And so I'm not sure exactly how he feels about it. I know he mentioned the doctor said it was a rape, and maybe he thinks it's a rape, but I don't understand if that had happened to me, I would run away from those people, wherever that source of that pain or trauma was. I would go the other way. And so I would love to talk to Whitney Strieber sometime and just kind of get his perspective on how he got from the point where he was told that he was raped because of some lesions he had, to the point where he decided to dialogue with them and to move beyond that trauma. So that would be an interesting thing. But anyway, the ones that I'm familiar with, the ones that were people shared with me, haven't involved probing. They've been Betty and Barney Hill were, I don't know if you want to use the word experiment on, but they were tested. There was a needle put in her belly button and stuff like that. But I've never heard of the probing side of it from them. And Travis Walton, I've never heard him say that. And I think while it was somewhat of a traumatic experience for them, it was not a horrifying experience, kind of like the fire in the sky kind of made it look, which is one of the challenges when Hollywood gets a script, is they take a lot of liberties. And I know that Travis Walton was upset with some of the liberties that they took. But anyway, this was an exciting abduction story for me, simply because I know two of the three people that were involved, and they're credible people. One of them goes to my church, and the second guy, I know him quite well as well. And so it's just kind of a neat thing. In fact, most of you know I'm a pastor, and one of the crazy things that have come out of being a pastor who believes in UFOs or UAPs or NHI is that at first people look at me like I'm kind of crazy. How can you believe in God and how can you believe in aliens? And I don't see a conflict at all. But some people look at me funny, but at the same time, other people will come to me and talk to me about their experiences. And I don't think if I wasn't out there where people knew that I believe in this stuff, I don't think those people would have ever talked to me as a pastor about those experiences. But because I believe in them, that gave them the freedom. In fact, I did a video already on a friend that didn't want his name used. I think I called him Alias Smith or Alias Jones, but he shared an encounter he had in Hawaii. It wasn't an abduction, but back in 1968, a pretty profound one that you could not explain back then, and you still cannot explain today. And so then Gary came out with this one and shared it with me, and I really enjoyed talking to him about it and documenting it as well, which is kind of what we're doing here. We're documenting it for history, for future generations to be able to see this as well. But then I also have a couple of people that I know, and I was blown away when a mutual friend who really is not interested in this stuff. Normally when I bring it up, he doesn't say anything, and nothing positive, nothing negative, which a lot of times it tells me that when a person is that quiet, they're a little bit uncomfortable with what you're saying. And so usually when I see that, I usually back off. But he actually approached me a couple weeks ago and told me about a mutual friend that we have, that when he was bringing up that I'm into this stuff, this friend told him that he believed that he and his wife have been abducted. And so my hope is to be able to get together with this person. This person has moved down to Roseburg. And so, they're a couple hours away. So I'll have to figure out how to get down there or get them on the phone and get as much information about it. But the point I'm making is, man, this stuff is not as strange and bizarre as people want to make it out to be. I think if more people were open with their experiences, I think we'd find out there are far more abduction stories and UFO sightings than probably are known. And so why is that? Well, it's because people are afraid to talk about UAPs. People are afraid to talk about their sightings. They're definitely afraid to mention they've been abducted. Imagine telling that to somebody who doesn't believe in the subject. You say, "Oh yeah, I've been abducted by an alien," and they're immediately going to look at you like you got a tin hat, or there's something wrong with you. You got some kind of psychosis, or you're a liar. And so, I mean, it's hard enough to convince the people inside of UAP Twitter, or UAPX now, that it's true. And so, I can imagine what a difficulty it is for people who've experienced this to actually come out and share their experiences. I want to move on to the second part of this video, and that is an experience that my wife and I had together. But I want to step back a little bit and tell you how it kind of began. On July 4th, I went up to meet Shane, who's known as Old Vet Symposium on X or Twitter, and Shane has a long history of seeing orbs, and so he invited me to come from Oregon to Washington over by Yakima to be able to encounter a UAP, an orb in this case. And so I was really excited to be able to do that, and I met up with him. We ended up staying in one of the casinos over there, and I have to say this, Shane booked our rooms for us, and these were like amazing rooms. I couldn't believe how nice the rooms were, and we ate like kings. We had prime rib. I mean, it was a wonderful time. I really appreciate Shane a lot and respect him. He's a really good guy, and I think a lot of you probably know that already. But we decided to go out about 3:30 in the morning, once the fireworks and all that stuff was done with, and so we'd have a good bright night sky. And so as soon as we walked out the casino on July 5th, the morning of July 5th, Shane goes, "Man, look." And right as we came out, there was an orb. And I had brought my night vision with me. I bought a nice set of night vision binoculars for, $800 and some dollars. And so it was a decent set, but I really couldn't get a picture of that because there was all the parking lights in the way. And so we moved away from the lights, the parking lights for the cars for the casinos. And we got this area that was where there wasn't any of those lights. And it didn't take long. And all of a sudden we saw another orb. And I got my night vision out. I had it all recording. I was watching it. And it was just amazing. And so I just couldn't wait till when I got home to be able to get that little SD card unloaded and show it to my wife. And what a tremendous experience. But when I got home, the video was corrupted. And it was so disappointing. I even, on Twitter, I even commented about the disappointment. Here I finally have an orb sighting. I'm an experiencer, and I have nothing to prove it. And some of the people on Twitter said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll get another chance." And so just a few days later, on July 7th, I decided to take my wife with me and my oldest child, and we went over by Mallard Creek, which is a golf course just outside of Waterloo, close to Lebanon, between Lebanon and Sweet Home, Oregon. And we found a nice dark place to set up. And so I had my night vision binoculars. My wife had her telescopic binoculars, I guess you call them, but they go, normally you put them on a stand like you do a telescope on this. So they're big, they're huge. And so we're there. It's about 10:30 at night. The sky is crystal clear. And all of a sudden I look to my right, which would be to the west, and I see this yellow orb, this yellow object. Now it's way in the distance. And so I went ahead and got my night vision, and I got it on my night vision. And then I told my wife about it, and she saw it on her big old binoculars she had, her telescopic binoculars. And so we saw it with the naked eye. We caught it on night vision, and then she also saw it on hers. When we got home to download the footage, once again, the video was corrupted. In fact, it turns out that there's something wrong with these night vision binoculars. I sent them back yesterday, and they're supposed to be sending me another copy of them and stuff. So I'm supposed to get another copy, and another pair, should I say, not a copy. And we'll see. Hopefully those will work. But what we were able to do, let me go ahead and pull this mic a little bit closer. What we were able to do was to get a few stills out of this corrupted video. And so this is one of them you're looking at right here. This is the yellow object that I saw. And let me clarify, when I say something is an orb, I've already thought through what it could be first. And so I exclude things. It was not a telescope. I'm not a telescope, a satellite. It was not a satellite. I mean, it was the colors and stuff. Excuse me. The colors and stuff were different. You're going to see some of that. And it was not a plane. It did not. We saw 2 or 3 planes out there, and this was completely different. Didn't have the green or the starboard running lights, port or starboard running lights. And it did not have the flashing light that you would see with the plane. And so it's really easy to tell the difference between the two. Then I was able to get this picture. I zoomed in a little bit. This has nothing to do with the object itself. That's just has to do with when you take a picture like that and the pixels and all that. So that has nothing to do with it. And so the third one I took, this one was interesting because the object was going from the west to the east, and all of a sudden it went behind a tree. And when it came out from the other side of the tree, you can see it still has some of the yellow, but I want you to notice the kind of the blue and the red. And so I'm ecstatic that I got this, and I realized this isn't anything, that's close. I didn't have that kind of equipment, but there's no way that was a satellite. It wasn't an airplane. Obviously, somebody when I posted the pictures on my Twitter page, somebody said it was a bird. And I'm going, well, man, somebody must have decorated that thing with some Christmas lights, because that was no bird that I've ever seen. And one of the cool things about it was, though, I was able to experience this event with my wife. And my child was in the car, didn't want to come out because it was dark. I told her I'd protect her, but anyway, it didn't quite work out that way. But it was really cool. And here's my take on it when it comes to orbs. People say, well, I haven't really seen anything. And my question is, have you looked up? Have you spent any time at night looking up into a clear sky? Because I think you'll be surprised at how much is actually going on. Now, one of the things you have to make sure you do not mistake a satellite for an orb. Satellites will usually have a straight trajectory. They won't zig back and forth, they won't have yellow, red, and blue lights on them. They'll look like a star way in the distance that's tracking. Now, another thing that gets people in trouble is the Starlink satellites. Is sometimes there's a group of satellites in a row going a certain direction, but they're all in line. That's why they call it a link. And so just because you see more than one doesn't mean that they're not satellites. But if they have different colors to them. If they don't go in a straight line, if they go one direction and then all of a sudden come back, that's not a satellite. Satellites don't do that. Satellites orbit, which means they're going one direction and stuff. So it's pretty easy to recognize a satellite from an orb. But anyway, I'm hoping you enjoyed this episode. I know that it meant the world to me to be able to see something, because that's before I saw the orbs over in Yakima and the one I saw at Mallard Creek. It was hard being on the outside looking in, other people having their experiences. And even though I fully believe this, I mean, there's just too much history. There's just too much evidence for this not to be true. It meant so much for me to be able to go out and see something for myself. And so let me challenge you. If you haven't seen anything, if you haven't experienced anything, to go out, get yourself some night vision binoculars, get yourself, those big telescopic binoculars, and just go out and find a good place where it's dark and where it's clear, and look up, because there's a lot more going on there than you realize. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and subscribe to my channel. This is a newer channel, but it is definitely growing, and I'd love to have you to be a part of it. Anyway, God bless, and thank you for watching.